the next one here is policy compliance, and I think we have a fair number of people that are out there or that are listening that work for government or government agencies, and I guess the one question that probably people are wondering is why do organizations care about compliance, and then to sort of follow up on that, if you are a government agency, aren't there certain sets of rules that you have to follow, and aren't there utilities out there that sort of govern whether or not you're in compliance or not? And Steve, maybe you can help us out a little bit here.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of policy compliant requirements out there, usually spearheaded by the security officer, whether you're PCI compliant or whether you have to follow the compliance standards of DISA because you're a DoD organization or a government organization. And so you've got all these elements that you get audited against to ensure you're in compliance. And BMC has a product here in AssetCore where we had the ability to manually create whatever those compliance requirements were. Well, with the advent of SCAP and all of the STIGs and everything else that goes hand in hand with those tool sets, we understand that in the next release of AssetCore, they're beta testing currently to validate the integration of a SCAP utility within the AssetCore console tool bag, if you would, where all you have to do is download the zip file for the STIGs, run those against your devices that you want to see if they're actually in compliance or not. And if they're out of compliance, you can see exactly which rule it fails on. So we've really come a long way in making this a much more easily configurable way of taking the latest STIGs from the government, importing them into AssetCore, and then running our compliance checker against any number of devices and ensure that all of those devices succeed against that rule set. So they've really made this tool 100% bulletproof, and I'm looking forward to the next release when this actually comes out. Again, we're not guaranteed that it's going to come out. It's in beta right now. Currently, it's in the beta. It's in beta, but there's no guarantee until it actually comes out that it's going to be included. So I just want that caveat said.
Okay, well, that's pretty darn exciting. Maybe just for those of you that don't know about STIGs or SCAP, I guess STIG is a set of rules that would tend to somewhat lock down a server or a workstation, right? So, for example, we'll go out and we'll install, let's say we're going to install Remedy, and we go out to install Remedy on a server, and we go out and it's a STIG-based server, and we find out that the install didn't go well because of STIG. So can you expand on that a little bit about STIGs and then SCAP again?
Yeah, so STIGs are basically a set of guidelines that is actually adopted by whichever organization chooses to adopt them. But if you choose to adopt a set of STIGs put out by DISA, then you're just simply saying that my device is going to be hardened. So the registry sets are going to be set to deny, or a 0 is going to be changed to a 1, or more than likely a 1 will be changed to a 0, or a deny access. All it's doing is going through a set of rules and validating that that device has been hardened. So therefore, it can either be an external DMZ-facing server, and it's going to be hardened more so than if it's an internal server. And so when you go out there and you have a hardened server that's compliant with a set of STIG rules, you're going to find that it's going to be very difficult to install anything until you actually get exceptions to some of those STIGs or turn off a set of rules to do the installation and then turn those back on, as long as you can get through that initial installation process. So there's, like, for example, on the server 2008 R2 STIG, there's 187 items in that one STIG just for that one S that it goes into the operating system and looks to see what those values are set for. And if they actually are set to the level that is suggested as a guideline, then you succeed. If not, you fail, and then you have an option to remediate or create an exception because XYZ software won't run on S-Box with that particular STIG in place. So I hope that helps explain.
Yeah, and that seems like a terrific time saver, because I know a lot of times we have delays on some of our projects because the government, it takes them so long to get these servers STIG ready. Does that make sense? So this would help, I think.
Absolutely. But more in the compliance realm, what it's going to really help on is letting management know whether or not there's been any compliance slip. So therefore, from a central console, you'll be able to see during, after any security update that might be done, after Patch Tuesday, exactly, has my box now become less hardened because of what I installed during this Patch Tuesday event. And now you run that compliance checker against it, and it just saves tremendous amount of time.
Okay. Well, let's move on because, somewhat related, I think, is software license management. And this really gets a lot of attention right now because I think some companies do this very well and some companies don't. And Steve, since you're out there, do you have any examples of any audit horror stories, and how can Asset Core, prevent this from happening?
Well, I don't have a hard number, but I'm going to guess that the number of engagements that I've gone on where people have purchased and want to use Asset Core is around 20% of my customers have just come out of an audit from a software vendor, and they had to pay some penalties for not having a good handle on exactly how many instances of that software they actually had installed. And so Asset Core provides them that complete transparency to give them an idea of exactly what's installed on every single box, how many instances of that particular software and that version is out there, how many licenses do you actually own, how many have you exceeded, or do you still have left on the shelf that you can deploy. It becomes a very easy way to not get burned whenever you have an audit. So like I say, I spend roughly a half a day just educating the customer on exactly how to utilize software license management that comes along with inventory, and it's a great, great tool for them to use that they can centralize all of their purchase orders for that particular piece of software. It no longer lives on somebody's share that they're out on vacation and nobody has any idea exactly how many licenses you have left, or if an auditor comes in, putting Humpty Dumpty back together again with all the purchase orders to prove that you've actually, have 3,000 licenses that you have the right to have installed, where Asset Core consolidates all that into a single location. Okay,
that sounds very exciting. Now, let's say that you're going to keep track of all the different pieces of software you have. I assume there's some sort of like FootPrints, Asset Core software title library. Is that right, Stacy? Does that come with the product?
You're correct. So what we include with the software license compliance is a software catalog. And BMC does the updates to that catalog, but basically what it's allowing you to do is when I've gone out and done the exhaustive inventory, I'm able to see what software is on a given machine. Now what I can do is reconcile that against that software catalog, and kind of like Steve was saying, you've already entered in your licenses for a given title. You're going to be able to quickly see if you're in or out of compliance. The other nice thing that Asset Core does is put that in a dashboard, so it becomes very easy to see and read, and it's an interactive dashboard. So if you're out of compliance, you can quickly click and be taken to those machines that have put you out of compliance, or really kind of decide what you need to do at that point with respect to purchasing additional licenses so that you can be in compliance.
Okay. Yeah, you certainly don't want to get a knock on the door or an email that shows up and says, hey, you owe us this amount of money. No surprises ever is sort of the mantra here.
That's correct.
And then I guess the other thing that I think is pretty cool is, let's say you have Remedy Force or you have Service Core. Isn't this integrated in to those databases, the CMDBs?
That's correct. Okay. And so you're right. That's kind of one of the native integrations with both Service Core and Remedy Force. It becomes the tool or the interface that lets you see when I'm on an actual ticket, again, either in Service Core or Remedy Force. User has entered an issue. I'm on the ticket. I can quickly tell just from that Service Core ticket or that Remedy Force ticket what inventory is on this machine. That information is populated into those respective CMDBs by Asset Core. So, again, what we're doing there is alleviating the need for them to leave their service desk application and go into another application to see the inventory. All the information is right at their fingertips inside of that ticket.
Okay. Very good. All right. Well, let's keep moving then. And the next area that we're going to jump to is remote management. And Steve, maybe you can just describe a little bit about this, because this is something that you'll get there and then you'll help get remote management set up. And what does that really do for the users then?
Remote management, if you can remember back to when you use BMC and you're actually taking over that customer session. So unlike RDP, where you're having an isolated session on that particular box, here you can remote control a Windows box, a Mac device. We don't have remote control yet for Linux, but we're working on that. But you have the availability of setting up security so that some of your devices for your kiosks per se, you don't need to get a user-level permission to allow that remote control. You can just simply select remote control and jump right onto that box, whether there's a user logged onto it or not. And then for your other users that might be, your HR or your financial staff or your executive, you can actually say no remote controls allowed for that, or you can say that you have to have explicit permissions when a user is logged onto that box in order to be able to remote control that session. So you don't have to have any meet-in-the-middle software. The user doesn't have to initiate any kind of request for remote control, whether that user is sitting on the WAN or whether they're sitting out what I call Starbucks mode, which means they have their device up, they're not connected to VPN, they're sitting at home or in Starbucks or someplace, and you still have the availability, if the product's configured properly with a DMZ relay, you have the availability of actually remote controlling that device while it's sitting in the wild. And so I don't know how many help desk technicians have ever had to try to troubleshoot VPN solutions or reset those accounts. If you can actually come in remote control, fix that VPN tunnel, and then let that user initiate that VPN tunnel, they're on their way without ever having to bring that box back in. We also, have the ability to make sure that any software deployments or any patching that might have been done from the outside is also done well. So if a user has any issues, they can remote control directly in. So it's very customizable, very configurable. It is an add-on, and I would say that out of the places that I've gone that do not have remote control, I would say that most of those organizations who ask about it, they find it in their budget either that year or the following year to go ahead and add that piece because of the value add. They no longer have to do a drive-by to that user's box to actually do something. They can do it all remotely. And like I said, all of that information is in the ticket of the ITSM solution. So if you're using Service Core or Remediforce, it automatically gets auditable. So didn't mean to be windy there, but it's a really great tool.
Yeah.
And forgot to say, it's all, unlike VNC, which could be a security non-go kind of moment, because of the fact we're using SSL, we're actually doing this remote control session both inside and outside over a 168-bit secure tunnel. So from a security layer, we've got a really good wrapper around that.
Good. Yeah, I can't imagine if you're a service desk not having remote control, because how do you get to people? Because nobody's around anymore. So
right.
Okay.